Todd Family YouTube video, wherever you are, whatever you may be doing. Thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Today, here on the channel, we're going to be all over the place. We're going to be discussing some wrestling, some NFL, some college football, and no telling what else, because hopefully some people will come on here and join in live and I can answer some questions and comments as we go. If you come on here live and leave your comments down below, I would greatly appreciate it. But also make sure you give the video a like and a thumbs up, and subscribe if you have not yet subscribed. It helps the channel out tremendously, and I would greatly appreciate it. And make sure you share the video on all social media platforms. Let me make it a little bit brighter in here. Hopefully that light will come on here in a few minutes. I figured with it being daytime, I wasn't going to need any lights, but I guess I was wrong. The good news is if that light doesn't start working here in this spare bedroom of the home, you have seen enough videos to know how awesome, good looking, and intelligent I am, which, by the way, I found out yesterday that I am in a independent movie about wrestling, and I did not know until yesterday that I was in the movie. So if you would like to know what the movie is and how you can watch the movie, feel free to comment on here, or you can also message me on Facebook. I'm easy to find on Facebook. Just type my name up and there I am. But I found out yesterday that I was in the movie, and I really had no idea. Otherwise, I would have told people ahead of time that it was coming out. Look for me, but I didn't know about it, so there was no warning. So there's your warning. I found out yesterday. It is on YouTube. If you would like to go watch it, please do. And when you find the spot I'm in the movie, you can say, hey, I know that guy. It is a independent movie about independent professional wrestling. But on to today's video. We'll start with some wrestling, since I was just talking about wrestling. This Saturday, 6 o'clock, doors open, 7 o'clock, bell time. It is the aftermath of Fightmare 244, Livestock Road, Easton Nolly, Georgia. Already signed for this Saturday, Tyler Blaze versus Big Bad Brando. Luke Da Silva versus 10KJ for the New Blood Championship. Luke Da Silva won that at the last show because Cash was the New Blood champion, but he had to give up the title because he had a car wreck and broke his leg. So we really have no idea how long he's going to be out, so he could not defend the championship. Obviously, if you just tuned in live, feel free to leave a comment down below. It can be about wrestling or anything in particular. Jack Salem is going to take on Brian White and Dynamic Dexter. That's going to be a triple threat match. Tower is going to take on Tyler Veach. All that and more is coming up on Saturday. Of course, that's the only 4 matches that I know for sure will happen, but I'm sure we'll have 7 or 8 matches altogether, because Jimmy Lee will be there, Eric Thunder will be there, Wraith will be there, Drox will be there, Cade Powers will be there, the tag team champions, Forewarned, will be there. So I'm sure we're going to have 7 or 8 matches. Those are the 4 that I know for sure will happen, but you never know what will happen at 244 Livestock Road, Easton Nolly, Georgia, on the 2nd Saturday of each month. Doors open at 6 o'clock. Bell time is 7 o'clock for the aftermath of a Fightmare Saturday night. Now on to some National Football League stuff. Of course, we still have the one Monday night game coming up tonight, which I think the Chiefs will win that game. But hopefully I'm wrong because we already get enough Chiefs talk. They're the only team that's left right now that's undefeated. And if they win tonight, we're going to hear it even more. So hopefully they lose, but I think they win. But except for the game tonight, week number 9 of the NFL season is complete. Back on Thursday night, the Jets finally get their 3rd win of the season. They defeat the Texans 21-13. The Panthers defeat the Saints 23-22. And the Panthers were by far the worst team in the NFL last year. They started off this year as the worst team, but I don't think they're the worst team anymore. They just beat the Saints. And honestly, I think the Panthers are better than the Giants. I think they're better than the Saints, of course. I think they're better than the Titans. I think they're better than the Patriots. So they're still bad, but they're not the worst team in the NFL anymore. So that's a consolation if you're a Panthers fan. And the Saints are now 2-7. And if Dennis Allen makes it through the end of the year, this will be his last year as the Saints coach. And I'm not sure he makes it through the year, but if he does, he won't be back next year. They just look awful. But of course, he sucked as the Raiders head coach, so the Saints were dumb to hire that man in the first place. The Commanders, still the surprise of the league, they just keep winning. They defeat the Giants 27-22. The Bills defeat the Dolphins 30-27. The Chargers are just getting better and better every week under Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh wins anywhere he goes. The Chargers will be in the playoffs. They defeat the Browns 27-10. The Titans defeat the Patriots 20-17. The Falcons beat the Cowboys 27-21. The Falcons are now 6-3. The Cowboys are now 3-5, and only one time in the Cowboys' history had they started out 3-5 and still made the playoffs, and that was 2018, I believe. This year, I just don't see it. I don't know what's missing from the Cowboys, but it's just not there, and you feel bad for Mike McCarthy because you know he's going to get fired because it's Jerry Jones and it's the Cowboys. But if you just watch them play, I don't know, CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott look like, for whatever reason, they're not on the same page. And when your 2 best players on your offense don't get along, there ain't much you can do. But the Cowboys just have something missing. I don't know what it is, but when you watch them play, it's evident that it's there. I'm just not sure what it is. The Bengals defeat the Raiders 41-24. The Ravens defeat the Broncos 41-10. The Ravens continue to win, but they're not going to worry anybody until they can win in the playoffs. Lamar Jackson has quickly got that on his back that, hey, he's a regular season quarterback, because Baltimore does good every year in the regular season, and then come playoff time, they fizzle out. And that's because Lamar Jackson can throw the ball if Baltimore throws the ball when they want to. But when Lamar Jackson has to throw, and he's throwing because he has to, not because he wants to, it's completely different. And come playoff time, whoever they play decides, hey, we're going to stuff the box and shut down the run game and make Lamar Jackson beat us, and he can't do it. And until he does that, it don't matter if the Ravens go 16-1 every year in the regular season. It's not going to matter until they can win in the playoffs. The Cardinals are starting to be a surprise team. They've won 3 in a row now, I believe, and last year Kyler Murray wanted out. Of course, they fired their coach, but Kyler Murray's probably happy now because they're actually looking like a competent team. They defeat the Bears 29-9. The Eagles tried their best to give away their game with the Jaguars 28-23. I don't know if Nick Sirianni will get fired because the Eagles win, and you generally don't fire a coach when you win, but Nick Sirianni has to be the most incompetent head coach I've ever seen. He looks like he has no idea how to run a team. Either that or he's bound and determined that he's going to somehow, some way make every game be about him. And he done it again yesterday. He always does that. The Lions defeat the Packers 24-14. And then Sunday Night Football, we saw the Vikings defeat the Colts 21-13. And a couple NFL things to discuss while I'm on the NFL topic. I think it's clear that the Chiefs are the best team right now in the AFC. But I think as of right now, we sit here on November the 4th, 2024, the Detroit Lions are the best team in the NFC. They might be the best team in the NFL. They look really, really good. And if somebody come out right now and told me they had Detroit as their prediction to win the whole thing, I could believe it. That's not outlandish. They look really, really good. They're a good football team. Green Bay been playing some good football, and Detroit just manhandled them on both sides of the ball. I mean, it wasn't close. The final score might have been 10 points, but the game wasn't that close. And then I want to talk about some of the young quarterbacks that are failing, because some of them are going to have their career ruined because they're failing wherever they are, and they're just not going to recover from it. Some will recover probably at new homes, but you're seeing a lot of guys like Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson and Justin Fields now been benched again by the Steelers since Russell Wilson is back. And you're seeing a lot of these guys like this that fail. The Titans have already benched Will Levis, and they've gone with Mason Rudolph, who's been around the league for a long time. But what's happened is you have guys like Patrick Mahomes that come along and they're ready right away, just like C.J. Stroud. But in my opinion, C.J. Stroud was better last year than he's been this year. But what happens is you have guys like Patrick Mahomes and C.J. Stroud that get drafted, and they're ready to play right away. So all the other organizations have their quarterbacks, whether it's Bryce Young or Richardson or whoever, and they think, well, if Mahomes can do it, my guy can do it. If Stroud can do it, my guy can do it. So you're seeing all these quarterbacks get drafted and have to play right away, and they're just not ready. Now, some of them are not ready because they were overhyped coming out of college, and truth be known, they're just not any good. But some of them are not ready because not everybody's ready right out of the gate. Back in the day when quarterbacks got drafted, they were told pretty much immediately, hey, you're going to be the backup for 2 or 3 years. We want you to learn, sit on the sidelines, watch film, be ready in case we need you. But otherwise, you're the second string guy, you're the third string guy. But now almost every NFL team drafts a quarterback, and they want him to be ready right away. And they're just not. Not everybody can come out of college and be ready to play right away. So a lot of these guys, I don't know if Bryce Young will ever get another chance. He might. I don't know that he does. I don't know that Richardson ever gets another chance. When you get benched for almost 40-year-old Joe Flacco, the Colts are telling you that you suck. But does he suck because he's not ready, or does he suck because he just sucks? I don't know what's happened in the last 7 or 8 years, but now these NFL teams draft these quarterbacks, and they play them right away. But then if they fail, they're not just failing themselves, they're failing for the team, because the team's going to struggle because your quarterback sucks. But you can pretty much tell just about when they draft these guys when they're going to play. Now, the Falcons may have made an exception, and they drafted Penix because they signed Kirk Cousins. But most of the time, if you get drafted as a quarterback and you're 3rd, 4th round, then you're pretty much a backup. But if you get drafted in the 1st round, especially in the top 5 or top 10, that team's pretty much telling you you're going to play game 1, snap 1. And if you're not ready, you're holding the team back. So I feel bad because some of these quarterbacks are failing because they're just not any good. But some are failing because they're not ready. And instead of them getting to learn they're being thrown to the fire right away, and it's going to ruin their careers because they're going to struggle so bad that if they get cut by whoever they're playing for, ain't nobody else going to want them unless they sign them as a backup. And a lot of guys don't want to do that. If you don't want to start and be a starter right away, and then 3-4 years later, you're a third string guy. So guys like Mahomes and Stroud are doing good for themselves and being very successful, but they're hurting other guys because every other team thinks, well, if that guy can do it, my guy can do it. And that's not always the case. But on to some college football, because yesterday we had the AP poll come out, and of course, some folks say the AP poll no longer matters because tomorrow night we get our first college football playoff poll. But I'm convinced some of the voters just look at the AP poll and just write down the same teams, just different order. I've said the same thing for years now about the coaches poll, because you look now almost every week, the AP poll and the coaches poll are the same thing. I think the coaches just look at the AP poll and say, okay, I'll go with that, because you're not going to tell me that these people sit down and watch all these games and all this film and they all have the same opinion. Because I've been around 20 people at one time that watch college football, and you'll have 5 say this team's the best team, and 5 say, well, this team's the best team, and then 6 will say, well, this team's the best team, and then 3 will say, this team's the best team, and then you have one that say, no, it's this team. So you're not going to tell me that you have all those people in a room watching all these games and all this film, and they all have the same mindset, the same way of thinking. I don't believe that. So let's just talk about the AP poll and see how it lines up with the college football playoff poll tomorrow night, because I think it's going to be very, very similar, especially at the top. The bottom half, maybe not so much, but the top half, maybe a different order a little bit, but not by much. But Oregon, number 1, Georgia, number 2, Ohio State, 3, Miami, 4, and Texas rounds out the top 5. Penn State, number 6, Tennessee, 7, Indiana, 8, BYU, 9, and Notre Dame, 10. And I said here on the channel before the season started that I thought talent-wise, maybe not team-wise, but I thought talent-wise, the best 2 teams in the country were Ohio State and Georgia. The only thing that, in my opinion, makes Ohio State slightly better than Georgia is I just don't trust Georgia's passing game. I knew they were going to be worse this year because you can't lose your tight end and all of your experienced receivers that have any kind of experience in big games and come back the next year and be just as good. I mean, to think that, you're crazy. It's not going to happen. But I didn't think Carson Beck would regress like he has. I don't really know the reason. Now, receivers dropping passes, that's not on Carson Beck. But there's been times he's got open receivers, he just misses them. He throws it behind guys, in front of guys, over their head. He short hops them. I don't know what's happened to Carson Beck, but he's regressed big time. Between Carson Beck's regression and Georgia's receiving core just not being as good as it was last year, and obviously their tight end room's not as good, I think Ohio State is better all around, but I still think Georgia's right there with them. But Oregon has definitely been better than I expected. But that's because they come on late. The first 2 or 3 weeks, they looked awful. They were struggling with FCS teams. And ever since that Ohio State game, Oregon has looked really, really good. But if you're a Tennessee hater, you better hope that Tennessee loses to Georgia and I guess Vanderbilt, because this week they've got Mississippi State. Mississippi State's terrible. Unless Tennessee just lays a complete egg, they're not losing to them. But they've already beat Alabama. So to me, even if Tennessee loses to Georgia and they go 10-2, they're going to make the playoffs because they're number 7 now. Unless Georgia loses to Ole Miss Saturday, Georgia's top 5. If Tennessee is number 7 and they lose to number 2 Georgia, they're not going to fall below 12. It's just not going to happen. So if you're a Tennessee hater, you better hope they lose to Georgia, and I guess Vanderbilt, because they've got a non-conference game left. They're not losing that, and I don't think they'll lose Saturday. I know they lost to Arkansas, but Arkansas is decent. Mississippi State is terrible. We have Alabama, number 11, Boise State, number 12, SMU is all the way up to 13, LSU 14, and Texas A&M sits at number 15. Ole Miss 16, Iowa State 17, Army 18, Clemson 19, and the Cougars of Washington State round out the top 20. And then we have Colorado, Kansas State, Pittsburgh, Vanderbilt, and Louisville. And I know Vanderbilt's ranked again because they beat Alabama. As long as Vandy wins the majority of their games they have left, they're going to be ranked because it's a quality loss for Alabama. And I know Louisville's ranked because they beat Clemson. I get that. But honestly, I was shocked when the AP poll came out and South Carolina was not ranked because Pittsburgh was ranked. They were, I believe, 17 or 18, one of the two, and they got absolutely slaughtered. So I thought, even though they were undefeated going into the game, the fact that Pittsburgh gets no love, I thought they would clearly fall out of the rankings because they didn't just get beat. I mean, they got manhandled. They got walloped. They got slacked. They got embarrassed. They got destroyed. Any other adjective you can throw in there, throw it in there. And I thought since South Carolina beat Texas A&M by 20-plus points, and A&M was number 10, that the Gamecocks would jump into the rankings. So I honestly thought it was going to be Vanderbilt 23 and Louisville 24 and South Carolina at least at 25 because of the way they looked. But apparently they still have not convinced some pollsters. So Louisville gets that number 25 spot, and Pittsburgh does stay ranked. But this weekend, of course, we'll talk about all the games coming up later on in the week. But I do know for sure that Georgia and Ole Miss play this week. Of course, you know, a lot of people are going to pick Georgia because, you know, Lane Kiffin has developed this, you know, persona that he can't win a big game, whether it's true or not. People say that. And, of course, playing Georgia is a big game. So the folks that say Lane Kiffin can't win a big game are going to pick Georgia just because it's Lane Kiffin. And then you're going to have some that are going to say Ole Miss wins the game because I believe the game is in Oxford. And not only that, outside of the game against Texas, every game this year, Georgia's came out and played like a hot pile of garbage in the first quarter, if not the first half. And Ole Miss's offense is so good that if Georgia plays the first quarter or first half the way they played against Kentucky and the way they played against Clemson and the way they played against Florida, Ole Miss will beat them. But if Georgia plays the first half the way they played against Texas, they'll beat Ole Miss by 3 touchdowns. So, you know, what first half team is Georgia going to give you? You have no idea. And, of course, you won't know that until game time. But, you know, you can pretty much tell right away because if Georgia's flat, it's obvious in the first 5 minutes. So if it's 5 minutes to go in the first quarter and Georgia's offense is struggling, you can go ahead and say, this is going to be a tight game. But if Georgia comes out and it's 5 minutes to go in the first quarter and they've already got a touchdown and they're driving again, they might blow Ole Miss out of the water. But since Lane Kiffin has developed this background that he can't win a big game, if Ole Miss is going to beat Georgia, they better have the game won by mid-third quarter. Because since everybody says Lane Kiffin can't win a big game, if it's 5 minutes to go in the game and it's a tie game or Ole Miss is up by a field goal, then everybody's going to say Lane Kiffin's going to find a way to blow it. So if Ole Miss is going to win the game, they better have the game won by mid-third quarter. Otherwise, if it is a tight game and it's fourth quarter and it's tied or Ole Miss is up by a field goal or down by a field goal, then Lane Kiffin has a chance to prove to the country that he can indeed win a big game. But, I was kind of leery of the 12-team playoff, and I'm still leery of it because it waters down the regular season, and you're going to see teams like Alabama that have no business being in the playoff. But it does make for more intriguing conversation because now it's November, and since they've gotten rid of the divisions and all the conferences, we still have no clue who's going to play for the SEC title, the ACC title, the Big 12 title, the Big 10 title. Not a clue. Because it used to be you could pretty much figure out who's going to win one side. It was all about who's going to win the other side. But now with no divisions, it's November now. There is no telling who's going to play for any of the conference championships. Almost every conference now, as far as the Power Four, is still up for grabs. And it's all going to come down to these last pretty much 2 weeks because almost everybody's last game is your arch rival. And for most teams, except for Alabama and Auburn, your arch rival is not in your conference. So your last game is a non-conference game. And for most teams now, the week before they play their arch rival, they play some very, very, very low FBS team or an FCS team. So really, truly, you only have 2 conference games left for most teams. And Kevron, I'm glad you came on here, and I agree with you. You could not have said that any better. And I talked about it in my video Saturday night, and I talked about it in my video last night. They played absolutely awful. They couldn't have played worse. You could have took players from the 70s that are old and decrepit now, put them on the field, and they'd have played better than Clemson played Saturday night. They got outplayed by heart. They got outplayed on offense. They got outplayed on defense. They got outplayed on special teams. They got outcoached. I mean, in every facet of the game, they got outplayed. It was not close. And that's why I can't figure out why some Clemson fans are so disgusted by the loss. I mean, yeah, you lost the game, but it's not like the Duke game last year where, you had almost 500 yards of offense and got down inside Duke's goal line 4 or 5 times and only scored 1 touchdown because you kept fumbling. You missed field goals. You had penalties. None of that happened Saturday. I mean, this game Saturday by halftime, I thought, this game's over with because they just looked absolutely terrible. So to me, when it's halftime and you pretty much done told yourself this game's over, why are you upset about it? You know at halftime it's over with. You can't explain it. You don't know why your team looked so bad, but you know they looked so bad. So it's not like it comes down to the wire and you lost on the last possession. No, that game was over at halftime. They could have packed their bags at halftime and said, okay, Louisville, y'all can go back to Kentucky. Y'all won the game. And it'd been better to play in that game. I mean, they just got manhandled. They got walloped. They got slacked. They got embarrassed. And it's the 3rd straight year that they've came off a bye week and just looked absolutely horrendous. When they got off the bus Saturday night to run down the hill, they wasn't even running. They were not even speed walking. They were fast walking down the hill. So they got off the bus looking like they just were not wanting to play. So whatever they're doing on the bye week, they better change it because whatever they're doing, it ain't working because they looked absolutely awful. And I don't want to hear one Clemson fan even talk about backdooring our way into the playoffs. Why? If you go to the playoffs the way you played Saturday, you're going to get TCU'd and you're going to play somebody and get beat 65-10. I'd rather go to the doggone Cheez-It Bowl than I would go to the playoffs and get absolutely embarrassed. It doesn't help anybody. Yeah, you might still backdoor your way into the playoffs because you're sitting right now at number 19 in the AP poll, and you still got to play Pittsburgh, who right now is ranked. And if the Gamecocks keep winning, by the time you play them, they might be ranked. So if you finish 10-2, jumping 7 spots in the AP poll, now we'll find out tomorrow night where they'll be in the playoff poll, but AP poll they're 19th, so jumping 7 spots in 4 weeks is very realistic, especially considering half the teams above you have to play each other and somebody has to lose. For example, this Saturday, Bama plays LSU. Whoever loses that game is getting their third loss. Clemson's going to pass them. If Georgia beats Ole Miss, that's Ole Miss's third loss. Clemson will pass them. So you've already got 2 spots right there in the AP poll. So yeah, you could easily climb 7 spots, but why would you want to? There is no way that I'd want to go to the playoffs and make my fans watch me get beat by 40 points. I'm sorry, nothing about that sounds entertaining. It doesn't sound fun. It doesn't sound interesting. It's not a good idea. It's a terrible idea. So they've got a long way to go. Truth be known, they're a little bit better than last year, but I'm not going to sit here and say they're a lot better because they're not. I thought they had made a lot of progress until I saw what I saw Saturday. The last 5 or 6 years, if Clemson loses a game, it's always a field goal or a touchdown, or maybe by some chance they're down a touchdown and get the ball late and throw a pick and lose by 10 or 14. But now we're back to the Tommy Bowden days where when Clemson gets beat, they're getting slacked. And I just don't think you can go 10-2 if you're Clemson and your 2 losses are a combined, 43 points? You know, it's not like you're 10-2 and you lost by a touchdown field goal. No, you're 10-2. You lost one game by 31 and you lost one game by 12. That's 43 points in your 2 losses. That's terrible. So if I was a voter, I wouldn't put them in. And I'm a Clemson fan, but everybody knows by now that I'm an unbiased Clemson fan. And nothing about that team right now, to me, screams playoffs. Now, last year they were 8-4. So even if they go 9-3 this year, that's progress. Not much, but it's progress. 9 wins is better than 8 wins. But before the season started, I said 10-2, and right now they're 6-2. So right now they're right on course with what I said. I said they'd lose to Georgia, and then I said they would lose one game somewhere to the schedule, and that happened Saturday. Now, I didn't think they'd lose that bad and that convincingly, but I thought they'd go 10-2. So right now with 2 losses, they're right on pace with what I said, but still, they look awful. I mean, you've played 2 teams with the pulse all year long, and you didn't compete. And not only that, but Saturday, you come out of the gate, and your first 2 drives are probably the worst 2 drives I've seen from a Clemson offense since Mike O'Kane was the offensive coordinator. See, Kevron, you got me started. You got me on a roll. But those first 2 drives, they looked awful. They ran the ball 1 time and threw the ball 5 times. And all 5 passes were either at or behind the line of scrimmage. Nothing downfield. So you run 6 plays your first 2 drives. 5 are passes. 1's a running play. And then the 4th quarter, you're down 26-7. And you're running the ball almost every play. I mean, the game plan was like completely backwards Saturday on offense. And then your defense, you put no pressure on Tyler Shuck all night long. We didn't have not 1 sack. Barely had any hurries. Our wide receivers didn't get open. The offensive line played the worst they've played all year long. I mean, it was ugly. The only player that I saw putting forth effort 100% on every play the entire game was Phil Maffa. And I feel bad for Phil Maffa because Phil Maffa played his butt off the whole entire game. And he even had great stats. He averaged 5.7 yards a carry. But nobody will talk about it because you got destroyed. But it just goes to show how backwards the game plan was. At halftime, you're only down by 10 at 17-7, so it's still realistically you've got a shot. And at halftime, Phil Maffa had, I believe, 11 carries. So you're down by 10 at halftime. He gets 11 carries. 4th quarter, it's 26-7, and Phil Maffa winds up with 30 carries. Does that make sense? None of that makes sense. The entire game plan Saturday on offense was backwards. It was almost like during the bye week they went in there and decided what they were going to do, and they weren't going to change it. And then when it stopped working, or never really was working, they were like, "Oh well, let's just keep trying it. No big deal." It's 26-7 in the fourth quarter. We're down 3 scores with 12 minutes to go. We'll just run the ball every play. I mean, that is the dumbest thing that you could imagine. I mean, you couldn't think anybody be that dumb, but they were that dumb. So right now they might be number 19 in the AP poll, and they might be in that general area tomorrow night when the playoff poll comes out. But if I had to rank them, I'd rank them about 30, because realistically they are one of the 30 best teams in the country. But when you play that bad, I'm not ranking you. I mean, there's nothing about that team Saturday that deserves to be ranked. I mean, they were awful. They were ugly. They were hideous. They were bad. I mean, from the get-go, from the time the game started, they played awful. And you see them on the sidelines, and not one player cared. I mean, I didn't see no heart, no emotion. They're on the sidelines just chit-chatting, just talking like they're up 3 scores. And then it's fourth quarter, you're down 3 scores, and you're running an offense like you're up 3 scores instead of down 3 scores. I mean, it was just awful. I saw no heart, no desire, no passion. It's almost like since Clemson won 2 national championships that they've gotten complacent. And if you do that, eventually this is where you find yourself, because, you know, what you did worked for so long that all of a sudden when it's not working anymore, it's like, man, what do we do now? This has always worked. Now it's not working. I don't know what to do. The same thing happened with Philip Fulmer at Tennessee. Philip Fulmer, for about a decade, was one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in America. But then, after he won that national championship, it was kind of like his mindset was, well, now I've proven that I can win, so now players will come here. And then the players didn't come there, and Fulmer quit recruiting, and he thought players would come based on the power T and based on the national championship, and it didn't happen. And over time, Tennessee just got progressively worse every year. Same way with Steve Spurrier. Steve Spurrier was dominant when he was at Florida, but after he won the national championship, their domination stopped. He went to South Carolina, and they were still good, but nothing like he was at Florida. He coached South Carolina and gave them the best 5 years they ever had, and still not one time didn't win the conference. But he's like, well, I'm the old ball coach. People come play here because I'm the coach. And it just didn't happen. You know, what you do 20 years ago is not going to work right now. So when you get complacent, it's bad. But of course, I still think Dabo Swinney will be the Clemson coach for many, many years. But I could be wrong, because he hates the whole NIL stuff just as much as Nick Saban did, just as much as Tony Bennett did, just as much as Jay Wright did. And you've seen all 3 of those coaches retire. So Dabo's youngest son, I believe, is a sophomore, if memory serves. So if this NIL thing don't change in the next couple of years, when Dabo's youngest son retires, Dabo might just say, you know what, I'm done with this. I think he's hanging around hoping that it does change, and I think it will change. I just don't know exactly when that'll happen, but it will change at some point in time. This video is going to be much, much shorter, but Kevron sent that comment about Clemson playing so bad, and I think I've spent the last 10 minutes on a rant about how bad Clemson was. So hopefully Kevron will tell all the Clemson fans out there my thoughts on the game, and they'll come and watch the video, because I'm a Clemson fan, but I don't sugarcoat things. But the good news is I don't call anybody a name. I don't use foul language. I don't threaten anybody. I just call things like I see them. I can be a logical fan without being stupid, and calling names ain't necessary. Threatening somebody's life over a game ain't necessary. Wanting to fight somebody over a game ain't necessary. Having a bad day because your team lost ain't necessary. But I can call them like I see them without being a 12-year-old immature child. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. Did you know that Bruce Lee had an uncle that always told the truth? honestly. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of three. Tell your friends and family how much you love them.